that are taking place. Some Palestinians are being charged up to $2,000.
I'm not going to South Africa for the G20 because I think their policies on the extermination of people are unacceptable. So I'm not going. So I won't refer to anything having to do with South Africa. South Africa has behaved extremely badly. But
to pursue the agenda of white supremacy.
You think Trump is pursuing a white supremacist agenda?
Yes, I think so.
Sunrise over D.C., coffee in my hand. Saw the headlines from a faraway land. South Africa's politicos
running their mouth again about America and me. Where does it all end? They're about a whole year of the same old tune.
name calling in tall tales beneath the African moon. Oh, it's more trash in the USA. I declare, while their own folks are struggling beyond all compare, pointing fingers outward, ignoring what's inside. For Afrikaners and minorities, nowhere left to hide. Well, this cowboy's had enough,
Patience wearing thin.
gonna tell the world the truth.
Where do I begin? They talk about freedom and justice for all, while their own people are answering a different call.
Farmers on their homesteads,
Living in fear and dread,
minority voices silence words left unsaid.
promises like tumbleweeds blowing in the breeze, while their leaders keep on preaching,
Bringing us to our knees. Oh, it's more trash in the USA. I declare, while their own folks are struggling beyond all compare, pointing fingers outward, ignoring what's inside. For Afrikaners and minorities, nowhere left to hide. Well, this cowboy's had enough,
patience wearing thin.
gonna tell the world the truth.
Where do I begin?
I try to stay quiet,
Let it roll right on by.
but a man can only take so much beneath God's sky. That's the honest truth.
When you see folks suffering, it just ain't right.
Gonna set the record straight with all of my might. Oh, it's more trash in the USA. I declare, while their own folks are struggling beyond all compare, pointing fingers outward, ignoring what's inside. For Afrikaners and minorities, nowhere left to hide. Well, this cowboy's had enough,
Patience wearing thin.
gonna tell the world the truth.
Where do I begin?
Yeah, more trash in the USA.
But the truth will find its way.
Pretoria, listen up to what I gotta say. God bless America, come what may.
Come what may. Ooh, oh, 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 trek to the winner's parade. Every single debt was a price Jan paid. Oh, the history books are getting a rest. We found a new guy to put to the test. Put away the portrait, stow the old quill. There's a brand new villain for the political bill. We're trading in the Jan card for a trump card. It's a shiny new way to play the blame game hard. Is the power going out? Is the road full of holes? Don't look at the budget or the voter polls. Just flip that card. See the golden hair that dawns the reason for the wear and tear. Yeah, we're trading in the Jan card for a trump card today. But don't ask how, and don't ask why. Forget the years of the same old crew. The orange man in DC is coming for you. Inequality's rising, it's a Mar-a-Lago plot. He's so mean and evil, believe it or not. The original gangster is out of the door, 'cause Jan Van Riebeek isn't trendy no more. He's the new scapegoat, the fresh alibi. Whether the promises turn to a lie. America's mean, the world is so cold. It's the greatest story that's ever been told. Get your card, play your part, get host. Just flip that card, see the golden hair that dawns the reason for the wear and tear. Yeah, we're trading in the Jan card for a trump card today. Bye-bye, Jan. See you later. Hello, Don. You're the hater. It's all his fault now. Every single bit of it. Check the card, baby.
Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the program. It is Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. Yes, it is. Have you traded in your Jan card for your Trump card? Trade in your Jan card for your Trump card. After 373 years, poor Jan van Riebeek is no longer to blame for the ANC's failures and for the chaos in South Africa. It's actually Donald Trump. He's the one. So now we just pick on Trump all the time. It's all Trump's fault. Everything the ANC has screwed up is Trump's fault. So there you go. It's just so you know that. We want to make sure you trade in your Jan card for a Trump card. Let me do a sound check. Jan card. Oh, you sounded pretty good there. All right. Thanks a lot for being here. For those who caught me on the Caravan of Midnight the other night, thanks for that. Those who caught me on business, I haven't even checked. How's that video doing on business? Anybody know? Let's go to business. I'm just curious because I did that yesterday, short notice. Like, can you come on? I'm like, yeah. Okay, when? Now. No, they actually asked me the night before. It wasn't quite that short. Let's take a look and see if that video is even listed. No. Mine is hidden once again. So my video from yesterday. So this is what happens when I just search for business. Check this out. This. I guess this must be either business did it or it's indirect shadow banning. I think it's indirect shadow banning here that we've got. So let me take a look at this very quickly. So look at this. That's business. So that's with Alex Hogue. This is 2 months ago, 2 days ago, 1 day ago. Not me. 12 days ago, 2 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago. And there I am 3 weeks ago. Finally, that one shows up. So, that's odd. Where's the one from yesterday? Why is it not showing up in a search? Okay, there's the one. 40,000 views from a day ago. Okay, that one's got 40,000. Okay, that's cool. Cool. All right. That's the best one they've had this week. That's awesome. Cool beans. All right. There you go from yesterday. All your latest posts go viral soon. Well, I would hope so. I would hope so. All right. David Faree, thank you for your membership. I'm sorry I missed it. I had the alert box off for the interview with Dr. Mulder. It's back on now. Yeah, we've got this program and then Ronaldo, and then I'm off to the clinic for an injection. Did you see Atlanta plane tire blowout? No, I did not see that, so-called refugee. I did not see that. A little busy. Guys, things are just, happening left and right here. I mean, I'm prepping for Dr. Mulder's interview. I'm loading up the news for this broadcast. In the midst of that, I get WhatsApp, phone call, text messages. It's off the charts. What's going on? People freaking out. Okay, I don't know. I still haven't had time to investigate, and I won't be able to investigate till later today, but let me address something. A video apparently by Morne Bota is out there, and I haven't listened to it because it's not for cons, but I've discerned from it a few things. I did listen to the early part, in which I understood. Okay, so I'm not refuting his video. I'm not saying it's not correct. All I'm saying is that over the past year, we've had many people who've contacted me say, I think my details have been compromised. I said, what do you mean? I'm in the refugee program, but my details have been compromised. Why have they been compromised? Because I'm getting messages here from these people about the visa lottery program. And I said, okay, what you have to understand is that you went on to Google, probably, and you did a search, didn't you? And you went looking for refugee or asylum in America and Trump. All right? Google sells your data all the time. They make tons of money off of selling our data. When you search, they collect that data. If you have a Google account, they have your phone number. They have your address. They have your email address. And therefore, you're getting messages. And especially if it shows up a Gmail account, it should be patently obvious to people. So what I told people is ignore them, because these are commercial companies trying to make money off of the visa lottery process by helping you get there. And they charge fees for it. The visa lottery program is free. You don't need anyone to pay for it. No, by the way, it doesn't exist. Yeah, that's right. In December, Trump removed the program. It no longer exists. The visa lottery program is gone. So you don't need anyone for that. And people are just making false assumptions and presumptions that because they've applied for the refugee program or sent their information, someone has leaked their information. Highly unlikely. Now, I don't know if that's what's going on here, but I'm telling you that I've dealt with this over the past year, and I've got literally hundreds of emails from people that this happened to. And so people should just chill out and calm down. First off, if your information is leaked, there's nothing you do except change addresses and such. And I wouldn't do that in the midst of a refugee program, because then no one will be able to contact you. So not a wise move. So just, yeah. For everyone freaking out, supposedly there's no leak. Marketing companies buy. Yeah, thank you, Sigi. That's okay. That's what I said. They buy the data all the time, and people freak out. So here's the difference between experience analysis and hysteria. And so I will freely admit that if my analysis is incorrect, but I'm basing it off of limited information. So without having talked to the U.S. government, without having listened to Morne Bota's video, without having actually seen the emails that people are receiving, this is my analysis. Now, let's see if I'm correct. Again, if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But you can see how little information sometimes talented, experienced, successful analysts need to make these determinations. And again, I could be wrong, so I'll let you know. But I don't think that's what's happening here. All right, so, yeah. No, there's not a South African plane in the air. That's untrue. Any flights from South Africa would have already landed in the United States early this morning. There's no flight, no plane in the air. No, they would have already landed. Flights from South Africa don't land after 8 o'clock in the morning unless they've got a mechanical problem. They're all on the ground. The flights that came from South Africa with refugees last night, they're on the ground. There will be more flights tonight. So, no, that's not correct. The flights land here in the early morning. Okay. Somebody has a birthday? Whose birthday is it? Billy has a birthday. Okay, well, let's take care of that before we continue on. Since we have a little bit of time here. Fine. This is frustrating when I'm looking for things. They need a better way to do this. You've got so many things over here. Yeah, I can't find it. Why? This is very irritating. There we go. Okay, so we had the birthday cake up. No, the software manufacturers need to come up with a better way to do this. Happy birthday, Billy. Okay. I don't have time to greet everybody here. Sorry for that. I've just released a video, just published it, and hopefully the editing went well. I think it did. Thank you, Think of Nouns, for 14 Rand. Thank you, Alan, for becoming a member. Excuse me. Oh, gosh. Yes, the U.S. Are busy seizing a raiding tanker that's being guided by a Russian submarine. This is very, very dangerous. Yep. Thank you, Psycho Billy. David, thank you for your membership. Joan Stewart, welcome back. Alabala, thank you for your membership. One will post to be available for the Colonel of Fame. Just heard oil tankers leaving us with painted Russian names and flags out at sea. These ships that Russia's sending ships. Yeah, I know. Well, they're going to get seized anyway. It's not going to work. Well, Safa loading the spam, that's been happening for months, but people making videos and content, look, I'm not slamming any content creator because, again, I don't know the facts, but if I'm correct, this is the problem with social media. You have to be discerning, and so we'll see if that's the case, okay? Anyway, so happy birthday to Billy. So, all right, you have to be discerning when it comes to content. Okay, okay, 5 memberships. Okay, so let's get to the news here. I want to get to it. So thank you, Spicy Tunes, for the memberships you're giving to people. Oh my goodness. Let's get to the news. All right. Let's just go with the lead story without even looking at the headlines. The lead story, of course, is Donald Trump told The Atlantic that, the military option for seizing Denmark is not off the table. Or not Denmark. Yeah, Denmark. Seizing Greenland from its colonial masters, Denmark, is not off the table. That's a little disturbing. Denmark is a NATO ally. They are a carbon criminal, selling oil to the world and pretending to be a green country while making tons of money off carbon emissions from North Sea oil. But yeah, Denmark, such a lovely place, such a wonderful place. Been there many, many times. Special affinity for the Danes. But Denmark, a colonial power, colonized Greenland through the Vikings and then took it over from the Norwegians at some point. And they're still colonial power, which offered to sell it to the United States in the aftermath of the Second World War, but a foolish Congress refused to buy it. That was dumb as a box of rocks. Denmark now asserting that it is wrong for Trump to try to acquire Greenland, perhaps, but it's also wrong for Greenland to be the dominion over, or for Denmark to be the dominion over Greenland. Mondami is the model for New York. No, that guy's trouble. Well, Denmark criticizing U.S. acts in Venezuela, which is stupid. I mean, they should have just kept silent on it. They should have kept silent on it. Absolutely. But again, the weak will squawk, and while the strong do what they want. Let me see if my video got posted properly now. Checking it real quick. Oh, no, it hasn't. Sorry. All right, good. It's publishing now. Maduro's Allies, the ANC. All right, so that video just went live now. And hopefully that'll get some attention. Yesterday's got 42,000. It's okay, but not great. So a little sneak peek about what's coming up here, folks. So you can check this one out later on. So here's a little sneak peek of my video. Okay, ANC, Maduro's Allies. You jump ahead to here. It's taking a while to load. The of South Africa's ruling African National Congress has been on full display for the world to see this week as it responds and reacts to President Trump's raid on Caracas to capture the high-definition version. Hasn't quite loaded yet. Yeah.
Of international law.
Welcome back. The hypocrisy of South Africa's ruling African National Congress has been on full display for the world to see this week as it responds and reacts to President Trump's raid on Caracas to capture the wanted narco-terrorist accused, Nicolas Maduro, who stole elections. Well, there's been lots of responses, but let's listen in to President Ramaphosa as he talks a couple of times. Let's not listen to Ramaphosa, sorry. Let's not listen in to Ramaphosa. So that one's live. Once you're done here, you can go watch that. Thanks. Super chat. What super chat? Alabala posters. I read that. I read the super chat. Francois Ferrer, there's 40 Rand super chat. Thank you. Great interview with Dr. Mueller. Thank you for that. Elon Musk and Trump were always being friends. Democrats burning Elon car. Huh? Well, New York is already a bit of a crap hole. So, South African news. Let's start with that like we usually do. We'll move on from there. Ramaphosa appoints Andy Motibi as new National Director of Public Prosecutions, and people are not happy about it. He's the head of special investigating. He's been appointed as new Director of Public Prosecutions. Advisory panel concluded that none of the interviewed candidates were suitable for the position. 6 people were shortlisted. Investigating Director against Corruption head Andrea Johnson, her predecessor Hermione Cronier, Menzi Similani, Nicolette Bell, Adrian Mop, Kolisi Jennifer Kayanile. Wow, and none of them were qualified. Accept it for what it is. We don't have qualified applicants, says Sir Ramaphosa. President Ramaphosa today defended his decision to name advocate Jan Lakoa Andy Motibi as the next National Director of Public Prosecutions, saying none of the candidates interviewed for the post by an advisory panel were deemed suitable for the role. The outgoing head of the Special Investigative Unit will assume the role on 1 February. There were 18 or so applications and advisory panel forms, and none of those that were shortlisted really could be appointed. So in the end, because of the shortness of the time, I then relied on what the Constitution empowers me as president to do, and that is, for that reason, I decided to appoint Motibi. Speaking to media at a golf day fundraiser on the sidelines of the ANC's 14-year celebrations, Rustenburg. Yeah, the last time when Shamila Botia was appointed, I opened up with a process which many people welcome. It's not the law. The law says the president can appoint whomever he wants. But I felt that because of the importance of the position, we should open it up so the public can see and have insight into the type of person that we want in that position. But 18 applications, nobody's qualified? Mossel Bay residents evacuated after a fire destroys structures and vehicles. That's not good. Fire was out of control in Mossel Bay with strong winds fanning the flames. The Garden Route District Municipality said the blaze was currently out of control. This was several hours ago. Strong winds were overwhelming firefighting efforts. Fire crews remained actively engaged in suppression and structural protection. This was last night, folks. Out of control. Sewer collapse sparks a protest in Kailicha. Residents barricading the road. City condemns vandalism, hindering sewer infrastructure repairs. There's a policeman putting out burnt tires. Kailicha residents whose homes were flooded after bulk sewer infrastructure collapse in their area barricaded the busy Baden-Powell Drive on Tuesday morning. The protesters whose shacks built over sewage pipes flooded in November said they were trying to draw authorities' attention to the plight. Well, stop building your shack over sewage pipes. 40 shacks were demolished after the pipes burst. The protest brought morning traffic to a standstill. When we went to see what was happening, all of a sudden the kids shouted that all the homes were being flooded. Some of us could only save our IDs and a few possessions as the homes were filled with sewage. I've lived here for 17 years. We started getting services such as toilets, water, and electricity in 2015. But the vandalism, the criminal acts undermine critical infrastructure, and this is unacceptable activity. Barricading the road, not helpful. I will leave no stone unturned, dude. Give me a break. Who's not leaving a stone unturned? Garrett, what are you talking about? 10 Ethiopian teens found wandering Johannesburg streets barefoot, half-naked after a dramatic escape. 10 Ethiopian teenagers were found barefoot and half-naked wandering the streets of Molbarton and Bosonia after allegedly escaping from a house. Private security guards raised the alarm, leading police to intervention and rescue the teenagers who were unable to communicate clearly and appeared distressed. A 47-year-old foreign national was arrested following a high-speed chase and now faces charge of illegal immigration and human trafficking. According to security guards, the group appeared confused, exhausted, and unable to communicate effectively with limited or no English. The guards said the teenagers did not know where they were and struggled to explain what happened to them. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa, the epicenter of human smuggling, human trafficking. Yeah, South Africa, the human trafficking center of Africa. Where's the United Nations? Where is external intervention? Where is the ANC on the vast scale of human trafficking taking place in South Africa? It took private security guards to find these kids who escaped on their own. The quicker we get flights out of here, the better. All I see is bad coming, says the prophet's son. Thank you for the 100 Rand super chat. Crowds are gathering. The guard said they ran to me asking for a cell phone. That was the only word I managed to understand. They just wanted to call someone. He said he was about to hand the phone over when a vehicle with flashing blue lights approached. They dashed and hid behind a nearby school. The vehicle followed them and caught up with the boys. That's when I realized it was a police vehicle. In a separate incident in Bosnia, 2 half-naked boys approached security officers and asked for a cell phone. They're hungry and thirsty, so gave them food, water, and a soft drink. They contacted a fellow Ethiopian national. The man allegedly pleaded with the guards to hand the teenagers over to him, offering $5,000 as a reward. Of course, that raised serious suspicions. And they arrested the 47-year-old foreign national who was attempting to flee with these kids. Jeez, man, the epicenter of human trafficking. South Africa. Well, if the ball bounced the other way, says Nordkia, then Billy would have been the hero. Yeah. Ruan Norkia says, but for the bounce of the ball in that derby, north-south derby at DHL Greenpoint Stadium. Bulls captain Ruan Norkia says they'll always back their game drivers after fullback Billy Roux came under scrutiny for his decision-making in last weekend's loss because he kicked the ball directly into touch to end the game. But that wasn't Billy's fault. The Bulls didn't score when they should have scored. And Andre Pollard missed probably 9 points or 11 points off the kicking tee. Yep. So I don't blame him. Fear grips Caracas as a new wave of repression is unleashed under this government. Venezuela's government launched a far-reaching crackdown after Maduro's ouster, detaining journalists and civilians and sending armed gangs into the streets to harass civilians. For a brief moment, some Venezuelans allowed themselves to celebrate. When they learned Saturday that strongman Nicolas Maduro had been seized by U.S. Special Forces, many group chats filled with messages of joy and relief. Some people cried. One family in Caracas opened a bottle of champagne they had bought months earlier and saved for a special occasion. After more than a decade of living under Maduro, they were cautious hopes for a different future. But by Monday, those feelings have been replaced by more familiar ones: fear, dread, and uncertainty. Venezuela's government has moved quickly to suppress any public expression of support for Maduro's ouster, launching a nationwide crackdown that's included detention of journalists, the arrest of civilians, and deployment of armed gangs across the capital. Feels like it did after the presidential elections of 2024, says Maria, who spoke on condition of anonymity. And I call on President Donald Trump to speak out on this issue of the unlawful detention of journalists, the suppression of free speech in Venezuela. If we are seeking justice against the narco-terrorist accused Nicolas Maduro, we should also be seeking justice for Venezuelans, and this needs to be addressed prompto. It needs to be taken care of very quickly. Meanwhile, Venezuela is giving the U.S. 50 million barrels of oil. $50 million barrels of oil, valued at up to $2 billion. And Mark Myberg says that Africa's been selling its own people into slavery forever. That's true. Thank you for the 70 Rand, Mark. That is true. But South Africa, as ANC likes to stand up as a paragon of human rights and dignity, the Freedom Charter, and everyone seeking their own destiny. But of course, it is an epicenter of human trafficking. And we see it yet again with these Ethiopians smuggled into the country. Trump said the oil will be sold at market price and the money will be controlled by me to ensure it's used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. Crude oil fell in that news yesterday. $2 billion worth of oil from Venezuela. Interesting, to say the very least, is it not? See that oil dripping out of that hose? That stuff is thick. The U.S. is discussing options to acquire Greenland, including a military option on the table, folks. A military option is on the table. A military option. President Trump has been discussing a wide range of options to acquire Greenland, including the use of the military. It would be very simple. All we have to do is send a couple platoons and land in Nuuk and just take over the country. Denmark has nothing to do against it, but of course it would fracture the NATO alliance. But quite frankly, the NATO alliance, many people long have thought the NATO alliance has outgrown its usefulness, its utility. The NATO alliance went from an organization to defend Western Europe to one seeking a mission, intervening in Libya, in Afghanistan, seeking a mission. While it sat back as Yugoslavia disintegrated, a place it actually needed to be involved in. So we'll see. We will see. But Trump is dead set on Greenland, apparently. On Tuesday, 6 European allies expressed support for Denmark. Greenland belongs to its people, and only Denmark and Greenland can decide. No, Denmark has no say. It's ironic to hear UK, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Denmark say that Greenland belongs to its people and then say that Denmark has a say. Why in the world would Denmark have a say if it's Greenland's people who get to have a say? Make up your mind. Stressing that they were as keen as the United States on Arctic security, the European signatories of the joint statement said this must be achieved by NATO allies collectively. They also called for upholding principles UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders. Well, Greenland is a colonial possession of Denmark, and why am I the only journalist in the world pointing that out? Look at the map. Look where Greenland is. Nowhere near Denmark. Nowhere near Denmark. But Denmark remains a colonial overlord of Greenland. Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen welcomed the statement and called for a respectful dialogue. The dialogue must take place with respect to the fact that Greenland's status is rooted in international law and the principle of territorial sovereignty. The issue of Greenland's future resurfaced in the wake of U.S. military intervention in Venezuela. After the raid, Katie Miller, the wife of one of Trump's senior aides, posted a map on social media of Greenland with the colors of the American flag alongside the word soon. On Monday, her husband Steve Miller said it was the formal position of the U.S. government that Greenland should be part of the U.S. Asked repeatedly in an interview with CNN whether America would rule out using force to annex it, Miller responded, "Nobody's going to fight the U.S. over the future of Greenland." Well, interesting. What's next? The Faroe Islands? What's next?
We need Greenland from a national security situation. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security. And I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. You have underinvested in the people of Greenland, and you have underinvested in the security architecture of this incredible, beautiful landmass filled with incredible people.
We have to have Greenland. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security. We have to have it.
So that's the bottom line right there. That's why Trump is saying it. The Arctic sea lanes are open for much of the summer now, and there is passage because it's a much shorter route for the Chinese and for Russians and for others to transit the Arctic. And so with the presence of Russians and Chinese trying to exploit the seabeds of the Arctic Sea and transit that area and threaten the security of Canada and the United States, it is a national security concern. Denmark has long neglected the security of Greenland because they don't care. Greenland is just a colony for them, and they've not exploited it for anything since the Vikings have been there. That was the last time they're actually making good use of it. So Greenland is of critical geopolitical importance to the world and to the United States. Yep, Denmark is not protecting it. In fact, I thought that Trump was just was blustering to get attention, his typical negotiating position, which might be what he's doing now. He might not really want Greenland. He might be saying that to get the Danes to start stepping up or get NATO to build NATO bases there to start patrolling it. Maybe that's what he's doing. But after Trump made noise about it earlier this year, after going back in office, what happened was Greenland, after neglecting Denmark, after neglecting Greenland's security for decades, announced an $890 million naval package to buy 3 frigates and build a base in Greenland for Arctic patrols. That's not enough. That's a start. $1 billion is not going to get it done. Now, of course, the argument always is that Trump wants Greenland for all its minerals. Well, nobody's exploiting the minerals, and they're under 2 miles of glaciers. Not easy to get to. So, that argument holds a little bit of weight, but not a lot of weight. Only 56,000 people live in Greenland. Most of them are Inuit. Of course, Greenland was largely uninhabited. It was inhabited by Dorset people before that, who died off. But when the Vikings arrived, there was virtually nobody there. And certainly the people that are now weren't there. The Inuit came later, after the Vikings had already settled there. And they later came into conflict with the Vikings. But the Vikings settled there and had a huge colony, 2 colonies, the eastern settlement, the western settlement in Greenland, a long time ago. Yep. So, White House says that using the military is always an option for acquiring Greenland. European leaders are pushing back. Donald Trump and his advisors are looking into a range of options in an effort to acquire Greenland, noting that in a White House statement on Tuesday that the U.S. military to do so is always an option. Well, I mean, look, hey, if we're going for this, well, then we might as well just annex Diego Garcia, go for the Falkland Islands. We'll take the Falkland Islands from UK, and we'll take the Faroes from Denmark. I missed your 140 Rand super chat at the beginning of the stream. Okay, all right. Sorry, Philip. You just did another 35 Rand. All right, well, maybe I missed it because I was busy, and I usually go back at the end and do it. So let me look and see what your super chat was. Did you get more copier paper for your Xerox? I don't have a Xerox. I don't have a copier. I have a printer. And yeah, I put paper in the printer when it ran out. Thank you for the 140 Rand Super Chat. And the 35 follow-up. Thank you for that. Excuse me. So, Faroe Islands, Falkland Islands, are they on the table? Shetland Islands? Are they on the table now for Trump? But Trump says military option is on the table. That's crazy. President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority for the United States. It's vital to deter our adversaries in the Arctic. The President and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal. And of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the Commander-in-Chief's disposal. In a show of solidarity Tuesday, leaders of France, Germany, Britain, and other nations issued a joint statement with the Prime Minister of Denmark, urging the U.S. to respect its sovereignty. They wrote in a statement that Arctic security was a top priority for NATO, except it's not. It's not. NATO is much more concerned about killing Russians than it is about, securing its member states' borders. Much more interested in fueling conflict and the murder of innocents in Ukraine and Russia than it is about Arctic security. Trump warns Republicans of a third time impeachment. He urged GOP congressmen to focus on drug prices, transgender athletes, and women's sports, and cracking down on violent crime to win midterm elections. And Mark Myberg with a 7 Rand Super Chat says the EU puppets are weeing in their panties. They're weeing in their panties. President Trump Tuesday warned Democrats would find a reason to impeach me if the GOP lost control. You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached. It was a rare acknowledgement from Trump of the political vulnerabilities Republicans prepare to face Democratic Party buoyed by a string of off-year election victories. In districts that they control. They didn't win anything from anybody that was Republican, so it's just comical. He endorsed Mike Johnson, speaker from Louisiana, who struggled to manage an ideologically divided conference with a razor-thin majority without Trump's interference. So, Trump warns about potential impeachment coming up, and he's right. So, this nonsense op-ed from someone on the Hill. Let's read this. I was there on January 6th. It was terrifying, and we must never forget. By Sarah Gourmet. Sounds like a Eritrean or Ethiopian. On January 6, 2020, I had been a congressional staffer for 3 days. I did not yet know where the bathrooms were, yet I suddenly found myself in the middle of a riot designed to prevent the certification or a democratic election. I had escaped the 1998 Ethiopian-Eritrean War as a child. I did not anticipate experiencing such an attack on our democracy here in the United States. Well, you need to take a class in civics. That's not an attack on our democracy, and our democracy was never in jeopardy. You're not a very bright person, Sarah. Family and friends began to text me in rapid succession, check in and see if I was okay, but many of us, including me, truly did not know how the day would end. I wondered if I would see my son, then 2 years old again. Yet, despite fear and chaos, many staffers and members had one focus: on staying until the election was certified. No. That wasn't their focus. Stop lying. Buildings were evacuated. Loud sounds of rioters and altercations with Capitol Police could be heard clearly. Staff evacuated from other buildings. Came to shelter in place with staffers they'd never met. Most members of Congress were taken into safe rooms. Many of us, without protection and little information, decided to stay until the job was done. The true patriotism and courage of staffers who put themselves on the line because of their belief in our democracy is a story that's yet to be fully told. Yeah, as is the story of the willful negligence of Nancy Pelosi, the Capitol Police, the D.C. Metro Police, Muriel Bowser, the negligence of them in not having adequate security forces on the day in which they authorized 2 different sides of the building to have demonstrations in an intentional effort to set up the public. Yeah, that story has not been told either. In the years since that day, I've watched a dangerous lie metastasize. The attack was misunderstood, exaggerated, even justified. Well, it wasn't justified, and it also was not an attack. It was not an attack. The building wasn't burned. The building wasn't damaged. And she tells all kinds of utter nonsense in the story. I've watched colleagues resign under harassment and post-traumatic stress disorder. Please. Pussies. I've seen threats against members and staff becoming normalized background noise. I've watched many Americans grow numb to the idea that democracy itself is now a partisan question. It's always been a partisan question. If you don't know that, you need a civics class. This day marked the beginning of an ongoing test of the strength of our democracy. It forced every American to confront a fundamental question: whether our institutions are strong enough to withstand the lies, intimidation, and weaponization of grievances. Well, they're not when Democrats use the justice system to go after people and demonize them and attack them illicitly. Look what they did to Donald Trump. So the systems aren't strong enough to overcome that partisan nonsense that Democrats have imposed. For many staffers who chose to stay for Witness that day, we know that the partisan gridlock, daily stress, and exhausting work are worth the fight. The violent attack on the Capitol is supposed to scare people like me away. No, nobody knows who people like you are, Sarah, and nobody cares. You're obviously a political operative who's spreading propaganda instead of telling the truth about what happened that day. Instead, it clarified our purpose. Regardless of our past, whether that meant escaping from war in Ethiopia or being the grandchild of Holocaust survivors, many of us labor under the belief that this work requires us to commit to the ideals of this nation and not the indignation and nightmare of the insurrection. Well, first off, you're just a fraud. There was no insurrection. There were no weapons. There was no coordinated attack on anything. It was simply an event that was protected intentionally by the Capitol Police, by the DC Metro Police, by Nancy Pelosi to foment a riot. That was their intent, and that's what they got in the end. But it wasn't much of a riot. Nobody burned down the Capitol building. Nobody was beating the streets. The only people that died that day were the people who were dumb enough to go in the building, like Ashley Babbitt and the lady who had the medical distress. Utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Democracy does not collapse in a single dramatic moment. It erodes when good people decide it's no longer worth the fight. I chose to stay because I've seen what happens when we do not. And the only thing more dangerous than insurrection is forgetting why it mattered. The only thing more dangerous than that statement is the propaganda you're spreading and the lies that you're spreading. There was no insurrection. There were people who criminally entered the building unlawfully and should have been charged with misdemeanor trespassing. But instead, they were locked up for 22 years as dangerous felons, their lives destroyed. One person in Pennsylvania offed himself because of the charges against him that he didn't commit. People took plea bargains to avoid lengthy jail sentences. The horrific treatment of Americans who committed minor offenses, as opposed to the actions in the Summer of Love when a real insurrection took place in the streets of America. So where are you, Sarah, on the insurrection took place in Seattle at the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone when leftist wackadoodles seized the federal courthouse, put barriers up, blocked police from entering, then segregated their society based on race and demanded water, electricity, and cell phone coverage? Where were you, Sarah? That was a genuine threat to democracy. A genuine threat to democracy. The Democrats are a genuine threat to democracy, who ignore the law, who ignore the rule of law. Joe Biden invading this country with 20 to 30 million criminal aliens to bifurcate, divide this society, and destroy it. Those are the criminals. Those are the people who threaten democracy, not the Americans who were dumb enough to walk in a building when the doors were opened for them by the police. And yes, there were people that broke in the building, and those people should get lengthy jail sentences. It was criminal mischief. Absolutely. She said she reached home at 2 a.m. that night and held my son as tightly as I could, overwhelmed with gratitude that I was there to hold him at all. I knew in that moment that the day had changed me forever, just as it had changed this nation. And I understood with a clarity that I'd never felt before that protecting our democracy is not only about preserving the fabric of our country today, but about safeguarding the future of our children, who are counting on us to keep its promise alive. Sarah Gourmet is the Chief of Staff to Representative Yasamin Ansari, Democrat, Arizona. So an Eritrean and an Arab are who are talking about American democracy. Thousands of angry demonstrators trying to get into the Capitol. That's a lie. This is a comment by someone. There weren't thousands. I have the footage. I was there. I covered it as a journalist. It's a lie. 1,600 people were charged. Not even that many people went in the building. Less than 1,000 went in the building. Total nonsense. Total nonsense. Very bad to see, but total nonsense. And here is the Crypt Keeper himself telling fairy tales about January 6th. This evil scumbag, Chuck Schumer.
I was in the Senate chamber. My security officer grabbed me by the collar and said, "We got to get out of here, we're in danger." Thousands of people invaded the Capitol with the intent of disrupting and overthrowing our government, and Donald Trump urged them to do it. We can never forget this day. When there's an attempt to overthrow democracy, and then even a greater attempt by Donald Trump and so many Republicans to cover it up, deny it, and lie about it, we have an obligation, every American citizen, to remind people of the truth and remind people of the fragility of this democracy. 5 years ago today...
We do have an obligation to tell people the truth. Chuck Schumer, you lying sack of horse manure. Thousands of people didn't invade the Capitol. If thousands of people invaded the Capitol with the full might of the Justice Department ignoring the criminal actions of the summer of 2020, why did the Biden administration only charge 1,600 people with crimes? 1,600. That's not thousands. That's over 1,000. That's not thousands. That's a lie. Over 500,000 people were out on the grounds that day, on the mall, peacefully protesting. I have the footage of it. You can lie all you want. You can lie all you want, but you're a lying scumbag. And Donald Trump did not urge people to take over and overthrow the government. You're a lying sack of manure. And you should be charged with crimes for your lies as a member of the government, lying to the public. You don't have immunity for that. This is a dangerous fool who's never accomplished anything in his life, who's suckled off the teat of the taxpayer's entire adult life, never done a damn thing, never accomplished anything, never sweated or served this nation. Simply rich, elite scumbag. Chuck Schumer, the Crypt Keeper. Unbelievable. I was there. I was there too, Chuck. I was there too. You had security guards inside the building shooting innocent protesters who were dumb enough to walk in the building. What a scumbag. Well, The Guardian, of course, the leftist rag, says Republicans are silent and Democrats incensed on the 5th anniversary U.S. Capitol attack. Number one, it wasn't an attack, you morons. Number two, nobody's silent about it. I'm talking about it right now. I'm a Republican. I'm talking about it. Yep, congressional Republicans largely silent. On the 5th anniversary of the insurrection. That's because it wasn't an insurrection. The summer of 2020 had an insurrection, an actual insurrection. Stop the lies. Well, Obamacare's bogus Unaffordable Care Act is toast, at least the portion that was giving handouts to people. As enhanced subsidies expire, many Americans covered by the Affordable Care Act are having trouble paying for insurance. Indeed. Renee Rubin Ross is facing a stark reality of having to pay much more for health insurance this year now that Congress has ended without extended the enhanced federal tax credits. In other words, tax breaks, welfare. I don't even know how to get my mind around it. It's the opposite of affordable. That's why it was never affordable, because it perverted the insurance market. Said Dr. Ross, who relies on Obamacare to cover a family of four in California, staying on the same plan in 2026 will cost about $4,000 a month, $2,700 more than the roughly $1,300 per month she has been paying. Well, that's outrageous. That's a lot of money. Since the subsidies were first expanded in 2021, allowing more people to qualify and lowering their payments, millions of Americans have benefited. Yes, and our debt has ballooned, and I've had to pay for their benefits while I'm paying for my own health insurance. That is not right. A record 24 million people were receiving welfare under Obamacare in 2025. Vast majority receiving tax credits. But without the enhanced subsidies. Oh, Anna Kruger, 350 Rand Super Chat. Wow, thank you, Anna. Super sticker. Thank you for that. Clouds are gathering. Thank you, Anna. These higher costs are forcing many people to make hard choices. Some are deciding to go without health insurance. Indeed, they are. That's the consequence. 20 million Americans who are working were thrown off of healthcare rolls by the Obamacare scam when it first came into effect back in 2010. Yep. Many states, including those that rely on federal marketplace, healthcare.gov, the deadline for enrolling an Obamacare plan for January 1st is now passed. There you go. Health subsidies expire, launching millions of Americans into 2026 with steep insurance hikes. Indeed. Enhanced tax credits have helped reduce the cost of health care insurance for the majority of Affordable Care Act enrollees expired overnight, cementing higher health care costs. This is from January 1st. Some families grapple with insurance costs that are doubling, tripling, or more. Indeed. Some enrollees, like Salt Lake City freelance filmmaker and adjunct professor Stan Clausen, have absorbed the extra expense. Clausen said he was paying just under $350 a month for his premiums last year. That number will jump to nearly $500 a month this year. It's a strain for a 49-year-old, but one he's willing to take on because he needs health insurance as someone who lives with paralysis from a spinal cord injury. Yep. The ACA subsidy cliff may mean astronomical tax bills for many. An ACA enrollee with a household income that exceeds 400% of the federal poverty threshold by even $1 won't be eligible for premium tax credits. So let me put this in perspective for you folks, okay? If your income is 400 times the poverty level, you get welfare. 400 times. Can you imagine in South Africa? Everybody in South Africa, almost everybody except for Johan Rupert, would qualify for welfare. You'd all get SASSA grants if it was based on 400%. So if the poverty rate is $50,000, if you're making $200,000, then you get welfare. What the hell? What the hell? More specifically, enhanced ACA subsidies lapsed at the end of 25, leaving millions of households on the hook for higher insurance premiums. Labs also reintroduced the so-called subsidy cliff, where households that earn even $1 more than a specific income threshold will lose all eligibility for subsidies. In other words, it's not degraded. It doesn't taper off. It goes at one. So the income cutoff, which varies by family size, is $62,000 for a single person. Ladies and gentlemen, $62,000. So what they're telling you is if you make $62,000 in America as a single individual, which of course $62,000 is a lot of rand. That is actually 1,054,000 rand. They're saying if you make 1,054,000 rand, you get handouts, welfare from the government to subsidize your insurance. If you are a two-person household, it's 84,000. So if you're married, you get 84,000, and that total is going to be 1,428,000 rand. They're telling you if you make 1,428,000 rand, you get welfare from the government. And if you're a family of four, it's 128,000, 28,600. Six-figure income times 17. Ladies and gentlemen, Carolyn Levitt's speaking now. 2,186,000 rand for a family of four in the United States. They think you're entitled to welfare. It's insane.
Rural Health Transformation Program, an unprecedented $50 billion investment established under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. The Trump administration has also worked with 18 states across the country to ban junk food purchases using SNAP benefits starting this year. And thank you for leading that effort, Secretary Rollins. Additionally, President Trump took historic action to secure most favored nation drug pricing and secured deals with major pharmaceutical companies to massively lower the cost of prescription drugs. And those effects are being implemented as we speak. Americans are going to continue to see the result of these incredible deals the president cut. And I know President Trump and this team behind me worked incredibly hard to lower those drug costs for Americans. On Monday, the CDC adopted common sense updates to America's childhood vaccination schedule based solely on the gold standard of science. This action empowers parents and physicians to make the best individualized decisions to protect our children, while also restoring much-needed confidence in our public health system. And as a Maha mom myself, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you, Secretary Kennedy. To build on this progress, the Trump administration is now updating federal nutrition standards and guidelines to ensure that Americans have the most accurate, data-driven information supported by science and hard facts, not special interests or partisan ideology. President Trump has tasked two of the great individuals behind me, USDA Secretary Rollins and HHS Secretary Kennedy, with collaborating on this vitally important project. And today they are here to officially unveil the 2025 to 2030 Dietary Guidelines for America. These new guidelines are informed by the best and most reliable research on health and nutrition, particularly as it relates to the role of our diets and the prevalence of chronic disease in the country. They are also, these guidelines are easy to read and understand, so every American, young and old, can access this information that literally has the power to change. But these are not just an updated guideline. These are the foundation to all federal food programs in our country. These new guidelines are going to update the food that is served to America's children in our public schools, to the plates that are served to our great men in uniform in our military, our veterans, and the food that they are consuming at the VA. And these new guidelines are also going to impact nutritional programs for the needy in our country, such as WIC and Head Start. Unfortunately, for decades, federal dollars has promoted low-quality, highly processed foods that lead to scores of long-term health issues.
True.
Which means Americans have gone broke because of these health issues. Faulty dietary guidelines of the past stacked the deck against healthy eating and food options for everyday American families, which has fueled the chronic disease epidemic and jacked up the healthcare costs of households across the country. This failed approach in our public health system ends today. When these guidelines are followed, Americans will be saving themselves thousands of dollars. If we want to cut healthcare costs in our country, we must become a healthier country. According to the CEA, poor diet is the root cause of obesity, which accounts for $400 billion in medical spending each year.
Yep.
A healthier America will lead to a more affordable America. The new dietary guidelines from the Trump administration will ensure federal dollars go to real food to improve public health and therefore save the American people their hard-earned cash over the course of their lives. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Secretary Kennedy. The great people behind me will give remarks, and then we'll get into Q&A for the officials that are here on this specific topic. They will leave because
There's
there are
Ben
very
Carson.
busy people, and then I will open it up to Q&A with the rest
And
of you
Dr. Oz.
on the rest of the news in the world. So thank you, and we'll start with Secretary Kennedy. Thank you.
Today marks a decisive change.
They already
in
announced who's
nutrition
taking over for.
policy made possible by President Trump's leadership and the work of Maha moms and public health advocates who demanded reform. Today, in accordance with President Trump's directive, Brooke and I will release the dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history. These guidelines replace corporate-driven assumptions with common sense goals and gold standard scientific integrity. These new guidelines will revolutionize our nation's food culture and make America healthy again. For decades, Americans have grown sicker while healthcare costs have soared. The reason is clear. The hard truth is that our government has been lying to us to protect corporate profit-taking, telling us that these food-like substances were beneficial to public health. Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop. The new guidelines recognize that whole, nutrient-dense food is the most effective path to better health and lower healthcare costs. Protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. We are ending the war on saturated fats. Diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease risk more effectively than many drugs. Whole grains outperform refined carbohydrates. Added sugars, especially sugar-sweetened beverages, drive metabolic disease, and today our government declares war on added sugar. Highly processed foods loaded with additives, added sugar, and excess salt damage health and should be avoided. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, my message is clear: eat real food. Nothing matters more for healthcare outcomes, economic productivity, military readiness, and fiscal stability. The dietary guidelines shape dozens of federal feeding programs, including Head Start. These standards affect 45 million school lunches every day, meals for 1.3 million active duty service members, and food served to 9 million veterans in VA hospitals. Today begins the work of aligning those programs with affordable, whole, nutrient-dense food. Implementation requires coordination across the government. I'm working with many of my fellow cabinet secretaries to deliver results. I want to thank Bobby Mukamala, thank you very much, who is the president of the American Medical Association, for committing to mobilize the medical community on nutrition.
All right, I'll keep an eye on that. That's Secretary of Health Robert Kennedy Jr. Let me get through the rest of these. I've got just a couple more news items to get to. I was almost done. Thank you, Mornay VDS, for subscribing. So, oops, there we go. That's not what I want. Tim Walt's daughter, like we give a crap what she has to say, says there's enough to that scandal. Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz's daughter admitted there was enough truth to the alleged billion-dollar fraud scandal plaguing the North Star State as she opened up about her father's abrupt decision to drop his bid. Hope Waltz appeared on 1 Hour Detours with host John O'Sullivan just hours after her dad announced he was bowing out of the governor's race to kind of get that target off Minnesota. She says, I think there's enough truth to the fraud claim. Of course there is, like we give a crap what this strange-looking 25-year-old has to say. She then whined that President Trump and his supporters had twisted and amplified a scandal involving Minnesota's generous social safety net. I think he was popular during the campaign last fall, and he's still in office and he's running again. And so it's just kind of an easy thing for them to pick on, she told the media. Nope, he's not popular. He looks like a retard. He's a stolen valor thief. Yep, he's a clown, an absolute clown. Well, no cash bail. Yep. The effects of cash bail elimination remain a hot topic of debate. The most dangerous law in America, releasing criminals all over the streets of America. Illinois sheriff blames America's most dangerous law on a spike in drugs and homelessness. The sheriff of Franklin County, Illinois, delivered his take on the SAFE T Act and its impact on his community. More than 2 years after Illinois eliminated cash bail under the SAFE T Act, statewide crime data shows no increase in violent crime, but law enforcement leaders in rural parts of the state say the reform has created new public safety and addiction treatment challenges that statistics alone do not capture. The Illinois Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act was passed in 2021 and signed by Governor Pritzker the following month. Its most controversial provision, the end of cash bail under Pretrial Fairness Act, took effect in 2023. Supporters argue the reform will prevent low-risk defendants from being jailed simply because they cannot afford bail. Opponents warn that it would lead to repeat offenses, failures to appear in court, and harm to victims of crime. Statewide data largely undercuts warnings, but some sheriffs say that the law has worsened conditions for communities. The Alaska Airlines pilot who managed to safely land that plane where the door just ripped out of it. Remember that last year? Alaska Airlines pilot who safely landed a plane after panel blew out says Boeing is blaming him. That's an image taken on January 7th of 2024 and released by the National Transportation Safety Board. Now, 2 years ago this happened. Not last year, excuse me. Alaska Airlines flight 1282 was in mid-flight when that door just ripped off. The Alaska Airlines pilot, who has been universally praised as a hero for safely landing a jet after door panel plug flew off shortly after takeoff, is suing Boeing because he believes the playmaker wrongly tried to blame him and the rest of the crew. Captain Brandon Fisher was commended by the heads of the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Aviation Administration, and even Boeing executives, for helping ensure that none of the 177 people aboard Flight 1282 were killed when the blowout happened in January 2024. But Fisher's lawyers say Boeing's attempts to deflect liability in past lawsuits, despite what the NTSB investigation found, led the pilot being sued by some passengers and caused him great distress. Experts say it's unusual for a pilot to sue like this in an incident where he wasn't seriously hurt or killed. 4 flight attendants previously sued Boeing over the incident last summer. It was clear Boeing's words were directed at Captain Fisher in an attempt to paint him as a scapegoat for Boeing's numerous failures, say his lawyers. The NTSB investigation of the blowout found out that 4 bolts securing what is known as the door plug panel were removed and never replaced during a repair at a Boeing MAX 9 aircraft facility as was being assembled. Boeing and key supplier Spirit Aerosystems, which Boeing now owns, were implicated. The bolts were hidden behind interior panels, so they were not something that could easily have been checked in a pre-flight inspection by the pilot or anyone else from the airline. NTSB investigators determined the door plug was gradually moving upward over 154 flights prior to the incident before it ultimately flew off. Boeing's lie infuriated Captain Fisher as well, as he was being castigated for his actions as opposed to being lauded. Yep. So, unbelievable. The man saved all his lives and he's being attacked. Unbelievable. European allies are working on a plan if the U.S. moves on Greenland. This is funny. U.S. has begun operation to seize a Venezuelan oil tanker, as was mentioned earlier. This was a few hours ago now. We have a live update from the New York Times. Let's take a look at that. Apparently we've seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker. Oh my goodness. It's getting hot now, folks. It's getting crazy now. U.S. has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker linked to Venezuela. U.S. seized an oil tanker linked to Venezuela after tracking across the Atlantic. Originally called the Bella 1, the tanker was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2024. Russian military had started to move around naval assets and a Russian submarine to protect the Bella 1 leading up to the U.S. seizure, but it's unclear how close those vessels were to the tanker when it was seized. Tanker was seized roughly 190 miles off the southern coast of Iceland in the North Atlantic. Site shows the tanker taking a sharp turn south around the time that reports emerged of its seizure. U.S. separately seized another vessel in the Caribbean on Wednesday. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem celebrated the 2 seizures in a social media post saying, "The world's criminals are on notice. You can run, but you can't hide. We will never relent in our mission to protect American people and disrupt the funding of narco-terrorism wherever we find it, period." Coast Guard had tried to seize it last month after it was near Venezuela, but forces did not board it after the ship turned around and fled. U.S. continued to pursue the vessels headed northeast, and U.S. P-8 surveillance aircraft were out deployed from RAF Mildenhall in England to surveil the tanker for days ahead of its capture as it made its way north and past the UK coast. Nome said in a social media post that the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Monroe had been following the ship across high season through treacherous storms, keeping diligent watch. At some point, the crew of the tanker painted a Russian flag on its hull, claiming it was sailing under Russian protection. Shortly thereafter, the vessel appeared on Russia's official registered ships under the new name Mariana. Russia filed a formal diplomatic request last month to make the U.S. stop pursuing the vessel. By claiming Russian status, the legalities and seizing the tanker become more complicated, but two sources familiar with the matter said the Trump administration hasn't recognized that status and considers the vessel to be stateless. At least 12 U.S. C-17s landed at Fairford and Lakenheath air bases between January 3rd and 5th, many coming from airfields in the States. V-22 Ospreys were also active in the UK over the past several days, with the flight data appeared to show them running training missions eastern UK out of Fairford Air Base. 2 AC-130 gunships were seen arriving at Mildenhall. Wow, that's interesting. Now we got a lot more. It's more than just the C-17s. 12 C-17s plus V-22 Ospreys and AC-130s. Those are gunships, man. AC-130s. Yeah, USA doesn't need oil. No. U.S. last used Special Operations Forces to interdict the sanctioned tanker on December 11th. Wow. So they've seized the tanker now in the North Atlantic. U.S. seizes 2 tankers, one under a Russian flag. U.S. military intercepted a Russian flag tanker as part. It's not a Russian flag. That's a scam. That's a scam. U.S. military seized 2 oil tankers today as it tried to choke off Venezuelan exports of crude, including a Russian flag tanker that's been evading American forces for weeks. Military issued a statement saying the U.S. forces had seized a Russian flag vessel in the North Atlantic between Scotland and Iceland. It apprehended a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker, the MT Sophia, in international waters in the Caribbean, where it was conducting illicit activities. Russian Ministry of Transport confirmed that U.S. forces had boarded the vessel in international waters, adding a statement that contact with it had been lost. The Russian state-owned broadcaster RT published images of a helicopter approaching the Russian flag tanker being pursued by the Coast Guard. It said it appeared the U.S. forces were attempting to board. The tanker, until recently known as Bella 1 and now called Marinera, has been registered as a Russian vessel, and Russia had sent at least one naval vessel to meet and escort it. Russia's Ministry of Transport said that under the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, that no state has the right to use force against vessels duly registered in the jurisdiction of the states. Of course, the U.S. has not ratified that convention, but generally follows it. Well, that's an illegal ship, and that registration is fraudulent. Andrew Knoll, I've talked about the strategic importance of Greenland over and over repeatedly in videos I've made, in live streams, and earlier on this broadcast. The Arctic sea lanes are why it's important. China and Russia are intervening there. All right? I've covered it many, many times, including in this broadcast. And that's the news for today. Let me check in on the broadcast and see if they're still talking in that. Dr. Oz is speaking now.
And do want to express my appreciation for what the president has done overall to increase the affordability of healthcare. The biggest accomplishment, perhaps, for the health system ability to drop down prices last year was the most favored nation drug pricing that Caroline mentioned. These are incredibly effective at reducing the costs, for example, of what the president calls the fat shot, the Ozempic, GLP-1s category of medications. We dropped them dramatically. But the best way to reduce drug spend in America is to not need the drugs in the first place.
Spot on.
What you're hearing today with these dietary guideline adjustments are going to be massively effective, and not just dropping the need for us to buy these weight loss drugs, but buy these expensive drugs for autoimmune problems. We have evidence that food is medicine when it comes to conditions as varied as mental health issues from Alzheimer's and depression to fundamental realities of how children learn in school. So the question then becomes, what is this actually going to do in dollars and cents? And I had the group at CMS run some numbers for us to try to give you concrete assessments of how much this will drop the spend that the federal taxpayer must make for Medicare and Medicaid. And I'm more optimistic today than ever that we can address the fast rising rate of healthcare expenses in America because of movements like this. Right now, we're increasing health expenditures in America at roughly twice the rate of the GDP growth. We will correct that if we can get America to be healthier, because you can't be a wealthy nation without being a healthy nation. So 2 numbers for you to remember. The first is 30 billion. Why? 30% of healthcare costs are directly attributable to obesity. I'm not talking about indirect associated expenses, which are also present, but a very conservative number, 30%, are directly attributed to obesity. That's about $300 billion a year for just Medicare, If we were to affect obesity by 10%, which is an incredibly conservative and justifiable assumption that has been borne out in evidence-based dietary experiments and trials, just that alone is $30 billion of reduction of expenses for Medicare rather. That's also obviously correlated with Medicaid reduction in spending. In Medicaid, it's a different opportunity because in Medicaid, we educate children. 53% of children in America are covered by Medicaid or CHIP. And we have programs to teach kids and their parents what to eat, and how to make these dietary guidelines that Secretary Rollins and Secretary Kennedy have crafted with their teams into practice. It will dramatically change the natural history of how children are able to participate in life. But let me give you one last number. If we're able to get the average American, who today retires on average at age 61, get them just to work 1 year longer, because they feel so vital, so strong, so bullish about their future, because they're feeding their bodies nutrients that are essential to their high-functioning productivity, we will increase the overall GDP of our nation by trillions of dollars. So we will reduce healthcare expenses. At the same time, we jazz up the U.S. economy with trillions of dollars created by the productivity of American workers. God bless you both for making the DGA feasible and making it perhaps the wisest investment we could make in our communities. Marty McCary is one of my closest friends, the powerful leader of the FDA who's been taking brave...
No, Napoleon Dynamite, I don't have hours of my time to devote to doing something that 1 or 2 people are going to look at. It's much more respectful for people to actually watch the broadcast instead of asking questions out of order.
Decades, we've been fed a corrupt food pyramid that has had a myopic focus on demonizing natural, healthy, saturated fats, telling you not to eat eggs and steak, and ignoring a giant blind spot. Refined carbohydrates, added sugars, ultra-processed food. This study in JAMA now shows that 60% to 70% of kids are getting their calories from ultra-processed foods. That's an epidemic. We now have a generation of kids addicted to refined carbohydrates, low in protein. They are literally nitrogen negative because we've used old flawed studies that used urine nitrogen to estimate body protein metabolism, and they missed the mark. The old guidelines had such a low protein recommendation that we are increasing that by 50 to 100%. Kids need protein. The old protein guidelines were to prevent starvation and withering away. These new protein guidelines are designed for American kids to thrive, and they're based on science, not on dogma. We have 40% of our kids now with a chronic disease. It is not their fault. This is something that is the result of bad advice from the government and a medical establishment that for decades peddled research from a flawed 1960s model. Today, we are setting the record straight. This is not a willpower problem of our nation's kids. This is something adults have done to kids, and we're going to fix it. And so, as Dr. Oz said, the best way to lower drug prices is for people to stop taking drugs they don't need. We are going to finally address the root causes of our broken healthcare system: insulin resistance and general body inflammation, advanced by the protein-poor, micronutrient-poor, ultra-processed, refined carbohydrate diet that kids are addicted to today. And so, on behalf of the Food and Drug Administration, we are proud to be a part of this. We are grateful to be contributing to this work. Thank you, Secretary Rollins. Thank you, Kyle Diamantis, the best deputy commissioner for food at the FDA the agency has ever had. This is a historic day in America. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope everyone's inspired to go eat a salad for lunch after this briefing. If anybody has questions on this topic, we will take a few and then we'll get into the topic. We'll start with our new media seat. If you have a question on this topic today, Jamie Franklin, she comes from the Conservator. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, First of all, Caroline, congratulations on your pregnancy. We're so excited for you. Matt, how moms across the country, including myself, are just so excited by what this administration is doing to make our kids healthy again. But, you know, we do have concerns when it comes to these blue states pushing back on a lot of progress that we're making as an administration. And particularly, we're really excited that you guys revised and streamlined this vaccine schedule. However, what we have seen is that these blue states, whether it be, you know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, or pushing back on immigration, they continue to stop your guys' progress. So what has been the response from these blue states? Because as Maha moms enrolling our kids in school, this is a big issue, and we celebrate what you guys are doing, but we want to have it, you know, even in the blue states as well.
I mean, my hope is that we only released these earlier, 2 days earlier. I'm sorry.
It's creaking. He's creaking.
We only released the new vaccine schedule 2 days ago. The vaccine schedule, there's nothing compulsory in it. Everybody, I've always promised, I'm not going to take people's vaccines away from them. People who want to get vaccines, everybody who wants them can get all of the vaccines that were on the old schedule. They will all be paid for by the Vaccines for Children program or for the insurance the same as before. We release guidelines that we think are optimal to public health. They're the same core vaccines that are required by the European community. And those nations all have much better health outcomes than we do. And they're based on their best science and also on their conviction that when you put too many vaccines on the program, it actually reduces compliance. It reduces uptake. And so we want to maximize the uptake of vaccines by making sure that Americans know we are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense, that are grounded in science. And right now, that's the best science that we have. And again, there's 3 categories of vaccine. One is the core schedule, which resembles the European countries. The second is for people who have vulnerabilities, for high risk, and that doesn't change at all. And then the third is shared decision making, which any vaccine that was on the old schedule, you can continue to get. So people will make their own choices, and that's what democracy is about.
I asked the boss, Caroline, for permission to add a little bit to this because I think it's really important. And by the way, Jamie, what a superstar you are. It's so fun to see you in this seat, Jamie Franklin. The blue state question is a really important one. And for those of us that are running agencies with these programs, I mean, I've talked to a lot of you already about how we have 22 blue states that won't give us their SNAP data so that we can figure out and ensure that those who really need these programs are actually getting these programs. Clearly, you all have been writing about Minnesota. California's next. We're looking at New York, some other states. The amount of fraud in all of these programs is absolutely stunning. And the challenge is, I mean, from Medicaid, et cetera, I know, Dr. Oz, you've talked a lot about that. This is a significant problem. And I think who's really harmed in all of this conversation and when these blue states aren't partnering with us to try to do this right is we say blue states and red states, but in those states, there are all kinds of our citizenry and that aren't all Democrat or aren't all Republican. We had a poll that just came out that had about 85% of all Americans believe that states should turn their data over on SNAP so that we can figure out where the fraud is and ensure these programs are going where they need to go. So my request of these blue states and these blue state governors is partner with us. Let us figure out how to do this better. Let us make sure that whether it's the vaccine schedule or the SNAP program or the Medicaid program or the child care program, that we are doing everything we can to protect every tax dollar, but to also ensure those who need it the most vulnerable in our society, are getting the programs they need versus those who A, are not even supposed to be here, or B, are cheating the system.
Thanks, Caroline. One of the changes that was made had to do with alcohol. Secretary Kennedy or Dr. Oz, could you explain the science behind the new language on not saying 2 drinks for men and 1 drink for a woman every day would be healthy, and whether or not the industry had
Carolyn is short. Look how short she is.
Of moderation versus just saying alcohol is not healthy and you shouldn't drink it.
So alcohol is a social lubricant that brings people together.
Yes, it
In
is.
the best case scenario, I don't think you should drink alcohol, but it does allow people an excuse to bond and socialize, and there's probably nothing healthier than having a good time with friends in a safe way. If you look at the blue zones, for example, around the world where people live the longest, alcohol is sometimes part of their diet. Again, it's small amounts, taken very judiciously, and usually in a celebratory fashion. So there is alcohol on these dietary guidelines, but the implication is don't have it for breakfast. Right? There should be something done in a small amount with
You might have a problem.
Kind of an event that might have alcohol added. But the general move away from 2 glasses of men, 1 glass of women, there was never really good data to support that quantity of alcohol consumption. That data was probably primarily confused with broader data about social connectiveness.
That's well stated, Dr. Oz. Not a fan of his, but that's
Secretary
well said.
Rollins, I'm curious about with these guidelines. They're not mandates, they're guidelines. What are the practical effects of these guidelines on public schools all across the country?
Well, today begins thank you, John. It's good to see you. Today begins the first day now in a recalibration of the rules, whether it's school lunches, whether it's the SNAP program, whether it's that veterans were mentioned, our prison system, that now we begin the process of implementing and redrafting the rules to reflect what this new dietary guidelines for Americans actually is doing to our food system. So there is a lot of work to do. Nothing changes overnight, but as I think we've proven, this administration moves very, very quickly on all fronts, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and so you'll begin to see some real changes coming very soon. As everyone is aware, for many of our most vulnerable in the margins in our communities, the school lunch is often the best place for our children to get the healthiest meal. Hopefully with stocking standards and reworking SNAP and the SNAP waivers we've done, that begins to change too. But right now, that is going to be the single most important, from my perspective, move forward, is the school lunches and making sure that we're getting the right amount, the best amount, and most nutrient-dense foods into the schools. Thank you.
You also mentioned, Secretary Rollins, cost when you had your remarks a little bit earlier. Is eating healthier more cost effective? Is it cheaper than just having a diet of processed foods?
I had a whole chart to show you, but left it in the back, unfortunately, that yes, indeed, that eating healthy, for the most part, we've got 100 simulations, is actually less expensive. The challenge is the access to those.
All right, I'm going to have to end here because we've got Ronaldo, although I haven't got the link yet from Ronaldo to do the stream, so waiting to hear from him. But I do want to caution people about something. I'll make a short on this in just a few moments. Y'all need to, if you're a referee aspirant, you really need to tone it down, take a breath, and stop freaking out. Now we have people, but it's been going on for a long time, but now apparently it's blowing up. And with all these people suddenly in the refugee game and all these content creators springing up everywhere with all this insight, this shit gets blown out of proportion, okay? People who have been contacted by a legitimate refugee organization telling them that you will be arriving on this date at this airport. We will meet you there. We understand you have a background in this area. In order to help you find work, we would like you to send your resume to us so that we can start working on it to help you get settled right away. Oh my gosh, they've got my information. Oh my gosh. Oh, good Lord. Knock it off. If it was one time, I'd understand. But this goes on again and again and again and again and again and again. Let me tell how hard it was for me to figure out that this was bullshit, okay? People freaking out over nothing, okay? Here you go. So I was sent screenshots of where people were sending this stuff. It's bad. They got our information, okay? No. They were sent a message from this organization, Jewish Family Services of Metro West, New Jersey. This is a legitimate refugee organization. A legitimate organization. It took me all of 30 seconds to look it up. I already am familiar with it because I've dealt with them in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where they did do the job. This is not helping. This hysteria needs to stop now. People need to start acting like adults. My goodness. It's really, really getting old. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then this gets put up by content creators and people chase their freaking tail. And I have to keep making videos explaining to people, calm down. Well, we're doing the news, but I'm waiting on Ronaldo now, so. And he still hasn't sent me the link. So I'm going to end this thing up here, okay, folks? So fear is not a legitimate basis for stupidity, okay? It's not a legitimate basis for stupidity. It really isn't. Now, I suspect that most of my viewers aren't in this boat, but some people are. They truly are. I think some people simply need to zoll, you know? Because when people zoll, they put the saliva on the zoll, and then they share that zoll. People need to chill, man. I'm not in favor of marijuana or illicit narcotics, but you know, you need something to calm down, okay? Hawaii, wow, cruise ships pass daily. How's Hawaii, man? All right, that's it. I'm going to do a short on this, okay? No, he won't be able to work as an expat in the DRC. Jan, are you serious? I mean, that's a real question. How can your father be a refugee in the DRC? I don't know if you're being sarcastic or if that's a real question. You're trying to be funny. No. I don't know if I got your email, Quids. I didn't get it last night. Did you send it since then? I haven't had time to check my email this morning because all these people freaking out over things that haven't happened. Yes, I have your message. You sent it 5:29 this morning. I've been working since 6:30. I haven't seen that. Okay. All right. All right, guys. Cheers. See you a little bit later on Ronaldo, hopefully. You'll get directed there. All right. I'm going to make it short in the meantime if there's time to do it because Ronaldo hadn't sent me the link, okay? Cheers. Bye-bye.